Hello everyone, welcome to Full Moon Movies. A Better Tomorrow is not just the beginning of a trilogy, it is the emotional blueprint that later films keep circling, expanding, and at times struggling to recapture. Watching A Better Tomorrow trilogy in 4K from Shout Factory, what becomes clear is that while the sequels escalate scope and violence, it is the first film that actually remains the most grounded, the most human, and the most emotionally complete expression of John Woo's themes. At least that's what I believe. Now, from the opening moments of A Better Tomorrow, released in 1986, the film is less interested in crime mechanics than in the cost of living a double life. Ho and Mark are not chasing power, they are chasing normalcy. That desire to leave the underworld behind, to become ordinary, to restore family bonds, is what gives the first film its enduring weight. The criminal world is merely the pressure cooker that exposes this moral fracture. Chow Yun-fat's Mark Lee is often remembered for style, the trench coat, the sunglasses, the iconic toothpick. But in the first film, that style is inseparable from sadness. Mark isn't a cool anti-hero, he's a man who knows his era is ending. His bravado is performative, a mask hiding exhaustion and regret. Now in 4K, those subtle lands even harder. His pauses, his wounded pride after betrayal, and his quiet loyalty to Ho all feels more intimate. Thi Leung Ho's, on the other hand, anchors the film in moral consequence. His arc is about responsibility towards family, towards mistakes, and towards redemption that isn't guaranteed. Now, that relationship between Ho and his younger brother Kid, played by Leslie Cheung, is the most emotional core of the film. This is where the first movie truly distinguishes itself from its sequels. The conflict is internal and relational, not just situational. Violence erupts not because it's exciting, but because reconciliation feels impossible without sacrifice. The second film, A Better Tomorrow 2, released in 1987, expands everything: body count, set pieces, emotional intensity, but it also begins the trilogy shift away from the grounded struggle towards operatic excess. John Woo doubles down on brotherhood, loyalty, and revenge, but the emotional center becomes more symbolic than personal. Mark's presence looms larger, almost mythic, while Ho's quieter humanity resides. Now, this is not necessarily a flaw, it's just a tonal evolution. The sequel feels like a tragic echo of the first film where ideals collide violently and reality. Yet the yearning for normalcy that defined the original is now overshadowed by inevitability. Characters are no longer asking if they can actually escape the cycle, but how they will fall within it. The 4K restoration highlights Woo's visual ambition here: bigger action, deeper shadows, but emotionally the film feels less intimate. A Better Tomorrow 2 is powerful, but it feels like a continuation driven by momentum rather than necessity. The tragedy is louder, but the pain is less personal. Where the first film whispered its heartbreak, the second actually declares it. By the time we reach A Better Tomorrow 3, Love and Death in Saigon, released in 1989, the trilogy has fully transformed into a thematic prequel reinvention. Directed by Tsui Hark rather than Woo, the film shifts focus to a younger Mark and a different political and emotional landscape. Set against the backdrop of wartime Saigon, the film reframes Mark not as a fallen icon but as a man still forming his code. Now, there is ambition here: historical context, romantic tragedy, ideological conflict, but the emotional continuity with the first film still feels strained. Mark is compelling, but the struggle for normalcy is replaced by the struggle for survival and identity. Now, this is no longer about leaving the criminal world, it's about being shaped by chaos before the dream of escape even exists. In isolation, A Better Tomorrow 3 is an interesting film, which is stylish, tragic, and thematically rich. But within the trilogy, it feels more like a reinterpretation than a culmination. It explains Mark, but it doesn't deepen the emotional core established in the first film. The personal longing that made the original resonate is replaced by a broader historical tragedy. Now, this is why, when viewed as a complete trilogy, the first film still remains the most emotionally satisfying. In fact, there is a comment that John Woo wasn't really interested in making A Better Tomorrow 2. In fact, it says that the first movie captures something the others can only revisit: the quiet desperation of men who actually want an ordinary life but are trapped by past choices. The later films just amplify honor, loyalty, and sacrifice, but they move further away from that simple, devastating question that defines the original of what does it cost to be normal. Now, Shaw Factory 4K presentation allows this contrast to become even more clearer. The restorations are stronger across all three films, preserving grain, contrast, and Wu's expressive use of slow motion and framing. But visually upgrading the films also reveal their tonal divergence. The first film feels intimate and restrained, and the sequels feels increasingly theatrical. What the trilogy ultimately represents is the evolution of heroic bloodshed itself. The first film humanizes the genre, the second mythologizes it, and the third historicizes it. All these three have values, but only the first fully balances style with emotional truth. For me, A Better Tomorrow endures because it understands the violence is not just the story, it's the consequence. The true drama lies in relationships strained by pride, guilt, and unspoken love. The core struggle for normalcy is what gives the first film its lasting power and why decades later it still feels painfully relevant. In 4K, the trilogy doesn't just look better, it reminds us how the movie actually changed Hong Kong cinema forever. It wasn't the gunfights, it wasn't the codes or slow motion, it was the recognition that beneath the bullets were men who simply wanted a better tomorrow and knew that they might never reach it. Now, this trilogy is a must watch.